It started with a letter. A crisp, white envelope, neatly folded and stamped with the official logo of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, WCHOA. I pulled it out of my mailbox, my heart sinking as I recognized the return address. I knew it couldn't be good news. I tore it open, my eyes scanning the formal language. The letter accused me of violating WCHOA regulations by having excessive vehicles on my property. According to the notice, my driveway had exceeded the approved limit of 2 vehicles, and I was being fined $250 per day until the issue was resolved. I stared at the letter in disbelief. My driveway wasn't overflowing with cars. I had 4 vehicles parked there, but 2 were mine. One belonged to my sister who was sighting for the weekend, and the last was my elderly neighbor's car. Her driveway was being repaved, and I had offered her a temporary spot. It was a simple act of kindness, one that I thought would go unnoticed. But the WCHOA had noticed, and they weren't happy. I decided to call the WCHOA office to clear up the misunderstanding. Big mistake. The president of the association, a man named Richard Holloway, answered the phone. His voice was cold and clipped, dripping with condescension. "Your driveway is not a public parking lot," he said, his tone sharp. "The rules exist for a reason. Either follow them or pay the fines." I tried to explain the situation, my sister sighting, my neighbor's driveway being repaved, but he cut me off mid-sentence. "You've been warned," he said. "If you don't comply, we'll escalate the matter." And with that, he hung up. 2 days later, I woke up to find 2 more violation notices taped to my garage door. The fines had doubled. Each car was now being fined $500 per day. Thito Talgianthanatis was over $500 per day. Thito Talgianthanatis was over 10,000. I was furious. This wasn't about order or community standards. This was about control. Richard Holloway and the WCHOA were flexing their power, and they had chosen me as their target. Things escalated quickly. The fines kept increasing. 500 turned into 500 turned into 1,000, then 2,000 up by themed off the week. Thito Talduis over 2,000 up by themed off the week. Thito Talduis over 20,000. The WCHOA wasn't just fining me. They were actively harassing me. Threatening letters started arriving, warning me that failure to comply would result in further action, including towing unauthorized vehicles at my expense, legal action, and even foreclosure proceedings. But the real breaking point came when they towed my sister's car. I had security cameras installed around my property, and when I checked the footage, I couldn't believe what I saw. In the middle of the night, a private tow truck pulled up to my driveway. 3 WCHOA enforcers, clipboard-wielding goons in polo shirts, stood nearby, watching smugly as the tow truck hooked up my sister's car and drove away. The worst part? They left a $2,500 fine taped to my garage door, charging me for the tow. I stormed into the WCHOA office the next morning, footage loaded on my phone, ready to explode. But Richard Holloway was already waiting for me, his smug grin plastered across his face. I slammed the violation notice on his desk and hit play on my phone, showing the blatant theft of my sister's car. "Explain this," I demanded. Richard barely blinked. "Your driveway is not a storage facility," he said calmly. "The rules clearly state." I cut him off. "You took a car from my private property." He leaned back in his chair, completely unbothered. "The WCHOA reserves the right to remove unauthorized vehicles. Consider this a warning." A warning? I was boiling with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. Because right then and there, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to obliterate them. Because what Richard didn't know, what I had been keeping quiet about, was that I wasn't just a homeowner. I owned the entire neighborhood. Years ago, my grandfather had been a real estate investor. One of his best purchases was a huge piece of undeveloped land on the outskirts of town. He had planned to build homes on it himself, but before he could, a developer came in and bought part of the land. The deal? My grandfather kept ownership of the land itself, while the developer built houses on it and sold them to individual homeowners. When my grandfather passed away, the entire neighborhood's land deeds were transferred to me. That's right, every house in Willow Creek sat on land that I legally owned. And that meant the WCHOA was technically trespassing every time they enforced a rule. If I wanted, I could revoke their authority entirely. I didn't tell anyone, not the WCHOA, not my neighbors. Instead, I started gathering evidence of the WCHOA's abuse. Copies of every ridiculous fine they had issued, the security footage of their illegal tow truck operation, testimonies from angry homeowners who had been bullied by Richard and his board members. Then I hired 2 attorneys, a real estate lawyer to review the land ownership laws, and a litigation lawyer to prepare a massive lawsuit against the WCHOA. And just to really drive the nail in the coffin, I dug into the WCHOA's financial records. What I found was pure gold. The WCHOA had been bleeding money. Richard had been using WCHOA funds to pay himself a management fee of thousands of dollars a month. Worse, they had illegally increased fees without approval, meaning every fine, every raise due, and every enforcement action they had taken was fraudulent. I had everything I needed. I wasn't just going to win this fight, I was going to destroy the WCHOA from the inside out. Instead of going straight to court, I decided to drag the WCHOA through the mud first. Richard had spent months bullying homeowners, handing out fines like he was a king, and acting untouchable. Before I dropped the hammer legally, I wanted to make him squirm. Step 1. The anonymous leak. I gathered all the WCHOA's dirty secrets: Richard's inflated management fees, unauthorized fee increases, illegal fines, and towing operations, secret WCHOA bank transfers to personal accounts, and leaked the information anonymously to every single homeowner in the WCHOA, a local news station, the City Council's Housing Committee, and just for extra fun, I sent a copy to Richard himself. The neighborhood group chat exploded the next morning. People were furious. "They've been taking our money for years," one homeowner wrote. "Richard's been using our fees to pay himself," another added. By the end of the day, over 40 homeowners had gathered in front of the WCHOA office, demanding answers. Richard hid inside, refusing to come out, but it didn't matter. The media had picked up the story, and by that evening, a local news station was reporting on corrupt HOA management, with Richard's name front and center. As Richard tried to put out the fire, I made my final move. I had my lawyer send an official cease and desist letter to the WCHOA, outlining the land ownership rights. The letter was clear. The WCHOA had no legal authority over my property or any other home in the neighborhood. All fines, fees, and enforcement actions issued under WCHOA rule were invalid. Failure to immediately halt enforcement would result in a lawsuit and the legal EVY tie-in of the WCHOA from the land. That's right. Because I owned the land, I had the power to EVYCT the WCHOA itself. Within 24 hours, Richard called an emergency WCHOA meeting. The homeowners were furious. "You lied to us," one shouted. "You made us pay for nothing." Richard tried to calm them down, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but then I walked in. I stood in front of everyone, pulled out my land deed, and smiled. "This WCHOA never had power over me," I said. "And after today, they won't have power over you either." The room erupted. Richard's face turned white. He knew he was done. The WCHOA meeting turned into a full-scale riot. Homeowners were yelling, demanding refunds, and some were threatening lawsuits of their own. Richard, once the smug HOA president, was now cornered. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead as he tried to maintain control. But he couldn't, because I had just exposed the ultimate truth. The WCHOA had no power here. I handed Richard an official letter from my lawyer. Notice of EVY tie-in. The WCHOA had been found to have no legal authority over the properties in the neighborhood. I, as the landowner, was formally dissolving the WCHOA and revoking its ability to enforce rules, issue fines, or collect dues. Richard's hands shook as he read it. "You can't do this," he stammered. "We have a contract." I laughed. A contract that was never legal in the first place. By now, the entire WCHOA board was panicking. The treasurer tried to sneak out, realizing their bank accounts were about to be seized for fraud. The VYC president pulled out her phone, frantically calling a lawyer. But it was too late. My lawyers had filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of every homeowner in the neighborhood. We were demanding full refunds for every fine paid, financial damages for illegal enforcement, and criminal charges for fraudulent fee collection. The moment the lawsuit became public, The WCHOA's bank accounts were frozen. And just like that, they were bankrupt. The WCHOA board members fled within a week. Richard resigned in disgrace, and the WCHOA office was shut down. Some board members were personally sued for fraud, and the entire WCHOA organization collapsed overnight. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted to make sure that everyone remembered what had happened so that no other HOA board in the future would dare try to take control again. I bought the WCHOA office building at a public auction for $1. Instead of keeping it as a dull, soulless HOA office, I turned it into something useful for the neighborhood: a fully stocked barbecue pit, an outdoor community lounge, and a free public gym. The sign outside that once read Homeowners Association Headquarters was replaced with a massive neon sign that said, "No HOA allowed." Every weekend, neighbors gathered there to barbecue, work out, and celebrate the death of the WCHOA. And the best part? It was completely free for life. While all this was happening, Richard's life was falling apart. After being forced to resign, he tried to sell his house and leave the neighborhood. But no one wanted to buy it. His reputation was ruined, and everyone in town knew who he was and what he had done. For months, the house sat empty. Eventually, his mortgage lender foreclosed on the property, and when the house went up for auction, I bought it for pennies on the dollar. I now owned Richard Holloway's house. The day I got the keys, I invited every single homeowner in the neighborhood over. We threw a massive block party right in Richard's old driveway. Grills were set up, cooking all kinds of food. Music blasted from massive speakers, echoing across the whole block. Kids ran around, playing in a yard that once belonged to the WCHOA's worst tyrant. But I wasn't done yet. I decorated the front of the house with a huge banner that said, "Richard's HOA rules are dead." And the best part? Remember how he fined me for having too many cars? I turned his garage into a free parking lot. Anyone in the neighborhood could park there for free forever. In the years that followed, something amazing happened. No HOA ever tried to form in our neighborhood again. We had proven once and for all that homeowners didn't need some corrupt board dictating their lives. Instead, we handled things the way a real community should. People helped each other out, neighbors took care of their own homes, and life was good. We had turned what was once a nightmare of control and greed into a place where people actually wanted to live. And me? I had won completely. Because this was my land and no HOA would ever rule here again. With the WCHOA gone, the neighborhood flourished in ways no one had anticipated. The sense of community grew stronger as people began to take pride in their homes and their relationships with one another. Without the oppressive rules and constant threats of fines, residents felt free to express themselves and make their homes truly their own. I decided to take a more active role in the community, not as a ruler, but as a facilitator. I organized regular neighborhood meetings where everyone could voice their opinions and contribute ideas for improving our shared spaces. We established a community fund where residents could voluntarily contribute to maintain common areas, plant trees, and organize events. The old WCHOA office, now a VY Brandt Community Center, became the heart of our neighborhood. Every weekend, it buzzed with active VY tie. Families gathered for barbecues, kids played in the newly installed playground, and fitness enthusiasts worked out in the free gym. The neon sign that read, "No HOA allowed," became a symbol of our hard-won freedom. Months after the WCHOA's collapse, I received a letter from Richard Holloway. It was unexpected, to say the least. In it, he apologized for his actions and admitted that his obsession with control had blinded him to the needs of the community. He wrote about the toll his downfall had taken on him, how he had lost not just his position, but also his sense of purpose. I debated whether to respond. Part of me wanted to leave the past behind, but another part felt that everyone deserved a chance at redemption. After some thought, I invited Richard to the community center for a private conversation. When he arrived, he looked nothing like the smug, power-hungry man I had once known. He was humbled, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes filled with regret. We sat down in the lounge area, and I listened as he poured out his heart. "I was wrong," he said, his voice trembling. "I let power go to my head, and I hurt a lot of people. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make amends." I nodded, considering his words. "You can start by helping the community," I said. "We're building something new here, and we could use your skills. But this time, it's not about control. It's about collaboration." Richard agreed, and over the next few months, he became an active participant in neighborhood projects. He used his organizational skills to help plan events and manage the community fund. Slowly but surely, he began to earn back the trust of his neighbors. Just as things were settling down, a new challenge emerged. A large real estate development company, Horizon Properties, began buying up land on the outskirts of our neighborhood. Rumors swirled that they planned to build a massive housing complex, complete with its own HOA. The news sent a wave of anxiety through the community. We had fought so hard to free ourselves from the grip of an HOA, and now it seemed like history might repeat itself. I called an emergency neighborhood meeting to discuss the situation. The turnout was overwhelming. People were angry, scared, and determined to protect what we had built. "We can't let this happen," one resident said. "We've worked too hard to let another HOA take over." I agreed. "We need to act fast," I said. "We'll start by reaching out to Horizon Properties and making it clear that we won't tolerate another HOA in this area. If they refuse to listen, we'll take legal action." I reached out to Horizon Properties and requested a meeting with their CEO, a woman named Victoria Langston. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at the community center, where I laid out our concerns. "We've worked hard to create a community free from the constraints of an HOA," I said. "We won't stand by and let you impose one on us." Victoria listened carefully, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "I admire your passion," she said. "But you have to understand, HOAs are standard in modern developments. They ensure that property values remain high and that the community is well maintained." I shook my head. "We've proven that a community can thrive without an HOA. We don't need someone dictating how we live our lives." Victoria's smile faded. "I'm afraid it's not up for debate. The plans are already in motion." The meeting ended in a stalemate, but I wasn't ready to give up. I rallied the neighborhood and hired a team of lawyers to challenge Horizon Properties in court. We argued that their proposed HOA would infringe on our rights as property owners and disrupt the harmony of our community. The legal battle was long and grueling, but in the end, we emerged victorious. The court ruled in our favor, stating that Horizon Properties could not impose an HOA on our neighborhood without the consent of the existing residents. The victory over Horizon Properties brought the neighborhood closer than ever. We had faced a new threat and emerged stronger, proving that we could stand together against any challenge. To celebrate, we organized a massive block party. The streets were lined with tables filled with food, music played from every corner, and kids ran around laughing and playing. It was a joyous occasion, a testament to the power of community. As I looked around at the smiling faces, I felt a deep sense of pride. We had turned what was once a nightmare of control and greed into a place where people truly wanted to live. And we had done it together. Years passed, and the neighborhood continued to thrive. The community center remained a hub of active VYT, and the spirit of collaboration and mutual respect that we had cultivated became a model for other neighborhoods. Richard Holloway became a respected member of the community, using his skills to help others and make amends for his past mistakes. He even started a nonprofit organization to help other neighborhoods fight against oppressive HOAs. As for me, I continued to oversee the land, ensuring that it remained a place of freedom and opportunity. I had learned that true power wasn't about control, it was about empowering others to create something greater than themselves. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, I sat on the porch of the community center, watching as families gathered for a potluck dinner. The laughter and chatter filled the air, a symphony of joy and togetherness. A young boy ran up to me, holding a plate of food. "Mr. Landlord, my mom made this for you," he said with a grin. I smiled and took the plate. "Thank you," I said. "And please, call me Alex." As I ate, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. We had faced challenges, fought battles, and emerged stronger. And in the process, we had created something truly special. The neighborhood was more than just a collection of houses, it was a community, a family. And as long as we stood together, no HOA, no developer, and no threat could ever take that away from us. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. This was my land, our land, and it would always be a place of freedom, unity, and hope. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.